and justice for all. Hey, Tony. Sorry. Thank you, everyone. Ms. McNamee, would you mind reading the mission statement? It's on the screen too.
Laketran is committed to providing quality public transportation services to all Lake County residents with special emphasis on meeting the transportation needs of seniors and people with disabilities.
Thank you very much. And at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Dines for the oath of office for our new board members.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. And I believe it's just Ms. Stenger, so I'm going to administer the oath. Ms. Stenger, if you could raise your right hand, and I'll just have you repeat after me. Yes, go right ahead. Okay, I state your name,
I, Kim Stenger,
solemnly swear and affirm
solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and that I will honestly,
and that I will honestly,
faithfully, and impartially
faithfully, and impartially
perform and discharge
perform and discharge
the duties of trustee
the duties of trustee
for Laketran
for Laketran
according to the best
according to the best
of my
of
abilities,
my abilities,
and that I will
and that I will
not be personally interested,
not be personally interested,
directly or indirectly,
directly or indirectly,
in any contract
in any contract
let by Laketran.
let by Laketran.
Okay, congratulations, welcome.
Congratulations, Kim, and welcome to the board. At this time, are there any public comments in the room? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the Laketran Board of Trustees Board meeting minutes of June 27th, 2022?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Nunley. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Sheets.
Yes.
Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson,
Thank you. And at this time, it looks like we're going to turn the meeting over to Lisa for our financial statements.
Okay. We are reporting on our financial statements for the month of May. And so this is a summary of our revenues and expenses through the end of May. It's year to date. And if we focus on the center column, which is our actual, we've brought in about 15 million in total revenues year to date for this year. And our operating expenses are about 7.8 million. And then we've also had our local share. The capital expense piece is just our local portion. We get grant matches with that. Our portion was 600,000 for a total of almost $6.8 million. And then we have our estimated depreciation amount of expenses at about 2.2, leaving us a net income of about $4.5 million. Down below is just I do percentages, just to give you an idea. I think it's a good picture. We can look at the dollar amounts, which will be on the second page. But I wanted to highlight just one thing. There's nothing unusual in the month of May. Everything's just going kind of like as we budgeted or planned. There's nothing that really stands out. But as you can see, in 21, we were still feeling the effects of the pandemic. And so when you look under fares and miscellaneous, we were at about 8.3% versus 6.2 and 6.6% for 22 based on our budget and our actual. The sales tax one is the one that stands out that I kind of wanted just to highlight. We are on budget. I mean, we're not far off on our budget versus our actual for sales tax. But if you notice that in 2021, sales taxes is about 76.3% of our total revenues. That probably is a little more realistic. The reason, again, and I say this each month, and I just want to, I'll probably say it for the rest of the year, we are still drawing down some of those pandemic grants. So that is why you're seeing 34.5% actual for federal and state and 58.9% for sales tax. So when that shifts and we are no longer getting, we will always get federal grants, but we will not get those pandemic grants, which are significant. You'll see that shift, and it's probably going to look a little more realistic, like the 21 over there, with the sales tax being at about 76.3 and federal and state grants being at about 15.4%, unless we get some more grant money. So, moving down further to the wages and benefits piece, we are a service industry, so obviously our wages and benefits are going to be our highest expense. We were at 75.2% for that in 21. We're at a little bit less this year, 74.6% of our total budget. We budgeted to be around 71.4. So we're within that vicinity. And services and software and supplies, I think we're pretty good based on our budget. We're kind of in line where we said we would be. And then I'm going to turn to the second page. I'm not really going to highlight too much on that. These are just the actual numbers. So if you wanted to do the percentages yourself, you could kind of see, but it just breaks it out basically the same way, just in dollar amounts. And then I don't know if there's any questions in regards to the revenue that for this year through May. If anything stood out to you, you have any questions? If not, I'll move on to the STS piece. And STS is our special transportation services, our charter services. These are functions we do that we can't do within our normal, because we cannot use grant money or anything for it. It's totally subsidized and on its own. STS, the majority, not all, but the majority is used by the senior centers. In 2021, you can see for our revenues and our operating expenses, we weren't doing too much, again, still feeling that pandemic. And in 2022, you can see our revenues versus our expenses. We're doing much better using that service. We obviously aren't quite where we thought we would be budget-wise, and it was really hard to predict that, because when we first started this, we hadn't even had a full year under our belt, and then the pandemic hit. So we didn't really have a solid full year's worth of numbers to kind of base it off of. But again, it's a service, and so all the revenue is miscellaneous and fares, and all the expenses are percentaged out again in total. So wages and benefits obviously are going to be the majority. The service, our biggest service is the facility that we have to rent to put the buses, which we have to do that. We are not allowed to keep them stored here. And then just our basic maintenance and supplies and insurance. And then the second page will actually give the actual figures, dollar amounts pertaining to each one of those. But there's nothing that really stands out other than that we're using the service more than we were in 21 due to the pandemic. So, which means maybe next year we'll be back to some type of normal. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them on the special transportation services. If not, I'll go not the last, but the second page or third page is the cash balance piece. Again, I also note on the top, the Schedule C, page 14, kind of tells you where the detail is in your packet. Our operating revenue, we always keep that at about 7.9 million. We actually have a resolution for that states how we will justify that amount based on our actual expenditures. Capital, we obviously, when it comes to capital, it's not like operating capital expenses. We may obligate to something, but it may take more than a year for that to put that all in place and to spend those monies. Not everything, but there's some things, like if it were a construction project or something of that sort. But right now, we have a commitment that we haven't paid yet for our local portion only of $1,955,631 for a capital piece. The other is just there, it's sitting there for us to determine. Plus, we have also obligations out into the future, but I don't usually put that in there at this point, but it will show on the capital expense side when I go to the next slide. And then our STS portion of our cash balance is at $583,000 for a total cash balance of $40,947,860. I like to break it out so you can see where all the pieces are. And then if we go to the capital piece, this kind of gives you an idea. 2022, prior 2022. Those are grants or obligations we still have going on. The federal piece was at about 4.8 million and our local share was about 1.2, and we had a state contribution of 720,000. And then it kind of breaks it out by year after that for the actual 2022 through 2026 and 27. Most of those future years are mainly for buses. And those are grant obligations that we have with NOACA and that for those. And then again, I just highlighted in the bottom about the headquarters piece that's just in there as an earmark since we got that grant. And I listed it on there. So 66% of this total is federally funded, where our local portion's at 30.6, and we have about 3.1% at our state contribution. So if there's any questions, I would be happy to take them. And again, it's on page 15 in your board packet. There's a detailed list that Andrea does on breaking all that out for us.
Any comments or questions for Lisa? Is there a motion to approve the May 2022 operating and STS financial statements subject to audit and capital plan review?
So
Motion made by Mr. Swanson, seconded by Ms. McNamee. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Sheets, Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson,
Thank you, everyone. I will turn the meeting over to Ben for a discussion of additional service.
All right. This is a follow-up to the presentation that we conducted last month to talk about some additional service for 2023. So like I said last month, I'm pretty excited about this one. I'm going to go over it again just to make sure everyone kind of is on the same page about what we're asking for approval on tonight. So again, why are we talking about this? It's additional grant money by formula from the feds. So as part of the new infrastructure bill, we're going to receive $775,000 every year for 5 years, starting in 2023. It does require a local match of about $193,000, which will give us essentially a total of quote new money to play with of just under $1 million. So when we found out about this, we said, okay, what is the best way for us to use this to manage it? Kind of what services are we, short on? Could we do better? And so we have a couple things we are proposing. This should look familiar. So this is part of what we want to do is to extend hours in the morning from currently service starts at 6 a.m. We'd like to move it to 5 a.m. There is some dial-a-ride operating between 5 and 6 a.m. It is first come, first serve. It's a remnant of when service was cut in 2009. And it's not completely eliminated because there's a lot of dialysis trips that have to be done that time of morning because there's not enough capacity at dialysis centers to happen other times of the day. So it was originally put in place to provide just dialysis, but as other customers learned about it, they said, how come I can't have service between 5 and 6 like other people get? So there's been a little bit of creep where some other people have asked for it and they've been given service when they fit in. This would really make it real service open to everybody starting at 5 for both dial-a-ride and local fixed route. Evening service would be expanded from it. Right now, everything ends at 8 p.m. In next year, in this proposal, everything would end at 9 p.m. So last dial-a-ride window would be 8:30 to 9. We also have some changes proposed on Saturdays. This is mainly with fixed routes. Right now, every fixed route, except for one, operates on what's called a 2-hour headway. Again, a headway is how often you can catch the bus if you're standing at a bus stop sign. So right now, buses come every 2 hours. Our proposal is to move to every 1 hour, which is essentially the same as what we do during the week. So there'd be a mirror. Customers wouldn't have to understand 2 schedules. This would make things easier for them to navigate. And we're trying to do something on the weekend with a 2-hour headway. You wait for the bus for 2 hours. Let's say you shop for a half hour or 45 minutes. And you have to wait an hour and 15, hour and a half to get the bus back. So it's very inconvenient to use. And sometimes it's so inconvenient, people don't use it. So this would increase that service to essentially have 1 hour service on every route We also, right now, Route 4, which goes to Madison, and Route 9, which we added in 2020, those don't operate on Saturdays. So in our proposal, they would. Those are both operated with small buses. So summary, hour in the morning of local routes, improved dial-a-ride service, hour of service on local routes in the evening, extended or expanded dial-a-ride service, and hourly fixed route on Saturdays. I know we went through these, but I want to go through them again, just in case anyone wants to see them again. How did we decide this? We have a lot of data from surveys over the years telling us that these are where people want services from us. So back to 2013, when we did our transportation plan, we said, what 3 things could we do to improve the user experience? Saturday service was number 1. In 2013, we didn't operate Saturday service, so you can understand why people would want that. And then earlier or later service was number 2. So back since 2013, almost 10 years ago, people have been asking for these 2 things with some significance. Again, in 2013, we asked this question: buses need to operate earlier or later than they do now. 85% of people strongly agreed with that statement. Again, in 2013, essentially more information to say we want more service on nights and weekends, or earlier and later, and then weekends. In 2019, one of the most important things for people was Tyler Boulevard service to get people to work. So remember, that is not operating on Saturdays now. In this proposal, it would be. In our Tyler Boulevard public transit survey of employers and manufacturers, one of the main reasons that people had trouble using us is they couldn't get to work early enough. So think about it. If you have to be at work at, say, 6 o'clock, but the bus starts at 6, you can't make that start time. So by moving it to 5 o'clock, there's a good number of employers that have shifts that start at 6. So this should give them more opportunity to use the service than they do now. This is an area where people have kind of wedged in on dial-a-ride between 5 and 6. They've said, hey, I got to get to work. I have no other choice. Can I ride dial-a-ride? And if they fit, we've said yes. So hopefully those people will then stop riding dial-a-ride and they will ride fixed route service. In 2020, we did a local route customer survey. Their number 1 desired option was extended hours of operation. So they have told us again, more hours. In our Transit Go program, this is some really good. All these other pieces of data are, would you do this? Would you do this? Do you think you would do this? They're sort of speculative in nature. This data is not speculative. This is sort of restrictive. So it's, why aren't you doing something? So the reason why people are using dial-a-ride to get to work in the morning is they can't get there on time with a local route. That's 41% of the people using Transit Go. It's a pretty significant number. There's 2 reasons why they've been using dial-a-ride. It's either they can't get there early enough, or the employer's not on a local route. So not quite half the people using Transit Go. The whole reason is they can't get there early enough on a local route. So moving it up an hour should have a meaningful impact on people getting to work. So I kind of wanted to breeze through that. That's a lot of data. Summary again, the same thing we talked about last month. Add an hour of service in the morning for local routes, improve morning dial-a-ride service, add an hour of local routes in the evening, expand dial-a-ride service, increase Saturday to hourly service. So what does that mean money-wise? For the weekday extended hours, we're right at around $450,000. Saturdays, we're at $316,000. So that uses up $758,000 of the total we had available. That leaves us still with $209,000. We talked about van pool. We talked last month about potentially reserving some of that for increased fuel costs. So we haven't really allocated that money anywhere. It will just be extra within our budget next year if we need it for fuel, or we decide we want to do a van pool pilot. So next steps, hopefully we vote on that today. Then we will bring an org chart change to the board in September to add some additional full-time positions, because as you saw from Lisa's financials, 75% of our costs are labor. So 75% of the costs in this service here is labor. Between September and January, we would work internally to get all the materials updated, get the changes communicated, work on all the kind of details that have to happen. It's important to know that this is not as easy as it sounds behind the scenes. And the reason is right now our local routes operate for 16 hours a day. So it's 2 8-hour shifts. So it's very easy for people wise to manage. This will require some change to that. It's going to probably go to a 10-hour shift and an 8-hour shift. We do usually work with the union pretty extensively about what they prefer. So I don't know exactly what it'll be because we're going to, have a lot of conversations with them to make sure they're happy with it. But it is going to take us sort of redesigning a lot of the shifts. Not like it can't be done, but it is a good amount of work. So it's good to have the extra time to kind of get all that ready. The big date with that is having it ready for January of 23, where they'll do the shift picks with the new picks approved by the union. And then the service would begin in February. We don't have a specific date selected yet, but that's sort of the timeline that goes out with it. The federal dollars actually start arriving here October 1st of this year, because they are on a federal fiscal year. So October 1st is when the federal fiscal year starts. That's when that new revenue actually starts to show up to us by formula. So I know I went through that pretty quick. There's not really any changes from what we talked about last month. That's kind of where we're at. This is, at least for me, this is pretty exciting. This is something I really think, is going to help people get into work primarily. But we've been asked for this type of service for a long time. And so, having these extra grant dollars come at us from the feds, this is a great way for us to spend those. So if anybody has any questions, sure.
In our last meeting, we had talked a little bit about the possibility of doing some expanded service over the holidays. Have you thought about that anymore?
We talked about it internally. We haven't had a time to kind of figure out what that would actually be yet. So I would say we're still working on that.
Do we have any, is there any like statistics on like how many, on like a breakdown of who uses dial-a-ride or the fixed route on the different times of day as far as the total ridership, as far as like it supporting a need to be later in the evening?
Yes, I don't have that with me today. We can, the dial-a-rides to this, we can drive down into kind of as deep as we want to go with the demographics. They change from time to time, usually in the evening. The types of things people are doing are sort of shopping and stuff. So there are some work-related trips that happen that late at night. So typically it's a little bit of those shopping related types of things or work. The medical usually falls off around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So we did review that. I didn't, we could get into that very deep, but I didn't bring it in here because I thought it'd be kind of difficult to go through. Also because it's hard to say what people end up doing. People always tell us they want more. Whether they follow through with that I'm not sure. But we've heard so consistently over time that this is what people wanted. We decided that was the data to focus on because you never know exactly what people are going to do with the bus during certain times of day.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Ben? Is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing additional service to Laketran's local route and dial-a-ride modes pursuant to Laketran's objectives commensurate with its mission statement and service offerings? Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Stenger. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley.
Yes.
Sheets. Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson.
Thank you, everyone. And at this time, I will turn the meeting over to Andrea.
Good evening. So tonight I will be talking about a request to receive authorization to apply for grant funds at the federal level. So Ben has touched a little bit on this. The federal fiscal year runs from October 1st to September 30th. There are a variety of grant programs that Laketran applies for annually. We receive formula funding from 2 different programs. Formula funds are money that is appropriated by Congress, and the money is doled out to the different urbanized areas around the country based upon a formula set by Congress. Cleveland is in the urbanized area, and along with Greater Cleveland RTA, we share the formula funding for our region. The competitive grant programs are funding programs in which Laketran competes with other transit agencies across the country. In addition to increased federal dollars through the bipartisan infrastructure law, there are new grant programs that Laketran might be eligible for different projects. So Laketran pursues all grant opportunities for which we are eligible, and grant funding helps Laketran perform different capital projects. We spend a good portion of our formula funding on preventive maintenance activities to maintain our fleet and facilities in a state of good repair. We typically purchase vehicles using Section 5310 and CMAQ funding. So in conclusion, this is a routine and annual request that comes before the board. It helps Laketran complete capital projects and maintain our fleet and facilities in a state of good repair. It is my recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the attached resolution. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I will say, I forgot to put the grant tracker in my CEO report like I had discussed. I do have it in the presentation, but I thought I would apologize. I realized that today. So if you didn't see it, it was because I forgot.
Are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the filing of applications with the Federal Transit Administration for federal fiscal year 2023 and operating administration of the United States Department of Transportation for federal transportation assistance authorized by 49 USC Chapter 53, Title 23 of the United States Code and other federal statutes administered by the Federal Transit Administration, including Northeast Ohio Area Coordinating Agency, NOACA, for Cleveland Urbanized Area Federal Transit Administration, FTA funding from the Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program, Section 5310. That was impressive. Motion made by Ms. Nunnally, seconded by Ms. McNamee. Trudy, could you please call the roll?
Epic,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Hunley.
Yes.
Sheets, Stanger.
Yes.
Swanson.
Thank you, everyone. And I believe we're going to continue moving forward with the triennial disadvantaged business enterprise goal.
Yes, so tonight we're also going to talk about DBEs or triennial, or disadvantaged business enterprise. So the DBE program is authorized under 49 CFR Part 26. It's a very complex piece of legislation. Back in 2019, I attended a 3-day training on DBE regulations. So we could really get down into the nitty gritty on this, but in an effort of keeping it timely, we'll just focus on the triennial DBE goal. So every 3 years, every transit agency in the country that receives over $250,000 in federal funds has to create a DBE goal. And the DBE goal is a percentage of DOT-funded contracts that is awarded to disadvantaged business enterprises. The objectives of the DBE program are to ensure non-discrimination in DOT-funded contracts, create a level playing field in which DBEs can fairly compete for contracts, and helps remove barriers to participation. And these are in general just good procurement practices anyway. So when competition is high, it's good for Laketran. We succeed in getting the best pricing and the best quality when we have good competition. So DBE goals are calculated through these kind of steps. First off, we have to look at the 3-year period and kind of estimate what projects are going to be going out to bid during that time period. Then we calculate the relative availability of DBEs in our area to perform the work. There's a consultation process where we reach out to local chambers of commerce, small business associations, and minority business organizations on our DBE goal to get their feedback. And then we refine the goal based upon our past DBE achievement and accounting for under overrepresentation of DBEs in certain fields. For example, ODOT also has DBE goals. And so there are a lot of disadvantaged business enterprises that provide like structural steel for highways. So there's overrepresentation in that area, but there are like no DBEs available that provide software or computers. So that's an underrepresentation. So you have to take that into account when doing this calculation. The disadvantaged business enterprise goal setting document is in Govenda. And that describes all the calculations, and our DBE goal for federal fiscal year 23 through 25 is 1.4%. The DBE goal is required by FTA and must be approved by the Board of Trustees. So it is my recommendation that the board approve the attached resolution authorizing federal fiscal year 23 through 25 disadvantaged business enterprise goal of 1.4%.
Can you real quick just tell everyone what a DBE is?
Yes, so a DBE is a company owned over 50% by a historically disadvantaged person or group. So typically minorities and women. You have to meet certain income thresholds. So, if you're a woman who inherited her dad's $1 trillion business, you're not automatically a DBE. You do have to be a small business. There is a strenuous application process that is managed by ODOT to become a DBE. So like the city of Cleveland has like a women-owned business certification or a minority-owned business certification. Those are not the same thing as a disadvantaged business enterprise for the FTA. So a lot of companies need to do all of those things in order to be eligible for Laketran's purposes and counting towards our DBE goal.
What other groups can they be? Veteran, other
You have
qualify?
you have to be able to demonstrate your disadvantage. But yes, veterans, LGBTQ, minorities, they can fall into those categories.
And is a lot of that all based on the dollars then for those companies?
Dollars and ownership. You have to be able to prove your ownership of the company. A lot of people try to get around the rules by like the wife being the owner. She doesn't really actually do the work of the business. You have to be the owner and operator. Laketran doesn't certify DBEs because it is quite an onerous process, but they do it at RTA, the airport, and ODOT.
I mean, so part of the problem with this is that in your one bullet point, it said the objective of the DBE program is to remove barriers to participation. So we're saying that it's a strenuous ODOT process to get people certified to become a DBE, which is why I think our goal is set at probably 1.4%, which
So
I feel like that is extremely low.
it is low. I would love for it to be higher. There are 4 disadvantaged businesses registered in all of Lake County. So there is a dearth of participation in the DBE program in our area. So when I performed the calculation, I also looked at disadvantaged business enterprise in Cuyahoga County, Ashtabula, and Geauga counties, because that's where we get a lot of our vendors anyway.
Right.
So, yes, I agree with you. It is low. And
Do we know,
The-
are there ways to? I mean, I know it's not like your job, but like, there's gotta be a better process for ODOT to start helping these groups to get certified. I mean, it's a certification. It's a piece of
Yeah.
paper. It's provide an income statement and proof of something.
yeah, I think part of it is getting the word out, which, Laketran can help do. Also, FTA is going to be changing the income threshold probably in the next year to account for, inflation and allow for more DBEs to be eligible. They have a request for comment out at the moment for the DBE program. They released that last week.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see us, if we could push ODOT to like find better ways to get people applied and on their dollar, help people get certified and in the process, if we're trying to encourage DBEs to come to the table and bring their service and give them more money besides the companies and contracts that are major that get the work all the time.
Yeah.
What are they doing to help that mitigate that gap? That's a big
Mhm.
problem that, yeah, we see downtown.
I definitely agree.
I can, I talked to the Ohio Public Transit Association and see if we can put, as a association, put some pressure on ODOT to improve their, like an awareness campaign, and then maybe make it not as hard, because ODOT's process, which is what everyone uses, ODOT's process. So even like the airport and RTA just copy it essentially. But maybe we can put some pressure on them to make it like, hey, this needs to be a little easier.
Yeah, or like host workshops or something
an
where
interesting
people
idea.
could go somewhere and fill out an application or something that would be a little bit more user friendly. I
Yeah.
don't know what the process is or anything at this point, but
Yeah, we can, a workshop idea is interesting. We can do some, we'll investigate some and see if there's some way we can promote it and. help
yeah, again,
participate.
not really on your guys's,
Yeah.
not your issue to promote that or anything, but people could come and maybe pick up an application at Laketran if they're in Lake County or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Is 1.4% similar to past goals?
It is lower than the previous triennial period. I will say we spend a lot of money on computers and software and on capitalized maintenance, and there are just a dearth of available DBEs to perform that work.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
We could set different goals for different projects if we wanted to, though, right?
Correct. You can raise the goal on any project, and you're kind of supposed to, because not all work is eligible for a DBE goal. Only when there are subcontracting opportunities do you set a DBE goal on a procurement. You can obviously reach your DBE participation through hiring the DBE directly as like a prime. So for example, the concrete project out front for the walkway, the vendor we hired that was the bidder is a DBE. So we, instead of getting a 5% DBE goal, we reached 50% on that project because we hired a DBE as a prime.
So that's also something we could consider if the board is interested in us trying to be a little more aggressive with this goal. If we move forward with headquarters, that could be a great place to set a different goal. Construction projects like that are a little easier to attain the goal in because of trucking and some other stuff. So that's something we can look at and
Mhm.
potentially think about a higher goal for certain types of projects.
Absolutely.
Were there any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the federal fiscal year 2023 through 2025 disadvantaged business enterprise goal of 1.4%?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Stenger. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Epic. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley.
Yes.
Sheets. Stanger.
Yes.
Swanson.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Ben for a dial-a-ride bus presentation.
All right, so this presentation is to talk about dial-a-ride bus replacements. So for dial-a-ride buses, we typically enter into a 5-year agreement with a vendor. That contract was expired. It was last awarded in 2017. So we went out for procurement for a new vendor. When we do that, we have different types of buses we operate. So we call them bus 1, 2, 3. In this case, there's a 4, but those are just based on the type of equipment and specifications that bus has within Laketran. We try to replace a group of buses every year. We have right at around 100 dial-a-ride buses, so we should be doing around 16-ish a year, depending on how long we keep them. Right now, we target keeping them for about 7 years. We put a request for proposal out on May 2nd. Proposals were due on June 13th. We conducted interviews on June 20th. We have what I would consider is a pretty unique component to our interview process where we make the vendors deliver sample buses here. They usually, kind of whine and cry at us for making them do that, but we want to see the buses they're proposing to us. We put them up on the lift in the shop. The mechanics do an evaluation process where they review how the wiring is connected and how all those things go together. We hear pretty consistently from the vendors that no one else makes us do this, but we like to really be able to see what they're going to sell us in advance. They have the option to kind of walk through the bus with us. But we got bids from one of the vendors we use now. And so I'm going to kind of go through the different bus types real quick. So bus 1 is a low floor cutaway. So this is the type of bus we are currently operating in our service for Lakeland. This bus is built on a Dodge chassis. It is a low floor, so there are no steps when you walk into this bus. So this is really good for fixed route style operation. It's not as good for traditional dial-a-ride because it has sort of a lower ground clearance and going in and out of people's driveways and into some of the more kind of rural ends we go to on the east side of the county. These don't perform that well in that environment, but they're kind of a mini fixed route bus. These will operate on routes 4 and 9. These are only available in gasoline, which is not our first choice, but that just kind of is what it is. These have some of the features, like they have the destination sign, they have the stop request on the inside of the bus. We've had 2 of these operating at Lakeland for the last couple of years. They've performed relatively well. The drivers like them. And this is actually, the body of this bus is really built really well. So they've been a pretty good product for us so far. So those were proposed by Tesco, who is our current bus vendor. We've worked with them for quite a few years. They've really been a great partner of ours. Bus number 2, this is more of the same. This is the propane dial-a-ride bus we've operated since 2017. These buses are sort of the workhorse of the fleet. There's over 60 of them. They have done a pretty good job meeting our needs. Tesco proposed the same vehicle again from the same company. So it's something we're very familiar with. We have parts on the shelf for it. It is a good option to keep moving with. Again, they're propane powered, so they're giving us that cheap fuel right now. And we're very happy with them. Where we see some changes is on what we call a narrow body. So that's an industry term for a bus that's a little skinnier. Right now in that bottom right-hand corner, you can see what is called a VT3. That is what we have 16 of those. We've been buying some of them for a while. Those are no longer available for purchase. Ford Transit chassis are very hard to get. I think something like 60% of Ford's production in the Transit chassis is dedicated to Amazon. They're hard to get. And the fiberglass for this particular vehicle is also hard to get. On top of the fact that we've heard from the customers that it doesn't ride that great. So generally we're not unhappy that we're not buying more of these. What we are proposing to buy is a new type of bus, not a new type of bus, but a different bus made by a company called Coach and Equipment Manufacturing, which is the picture in the big white bus. And so it is still a smaller bus. It's hard to tell in pictures, but our objective with the VT3 was to have a bus that met all the dial-a-ride bus requirements, but was smaller. So this bus can seat 10 people. This bus can seat 7. So in our goal to sort of always be driving towards the smallest practical vehicle we can operate, this checks a lot of boxes in that category, but it is built on the same chassis. So it's still a Ford Econoline chassis. So there should be a parity of parts and make it a little bit cheaper to operate. Because of the size of the bus and the weight rating, we can't quite get it in propane. But this company has been around for a long time. I had some of these back when I ran Claremont, and they actually specialize in vehicles to the transit industry. So we think this will be a pretty good vehicle for us.
It's ugly and dated.
It is ugly. I agree with you. The bottom right one is much more attractive. The top one, Julia will work some magic and make it look a little nicer. But it is ugly. We also have, for the first time, we added a bus 4 to the agreement. This is a sort of stripped down bus that runs on propane, or I'm sorry, that runs on gasoline instead of propane, that we don't really expect right now to buy a lot of these. We put it in the contract in case we needed it for something like Geauga, or something kind of came up where we had a need for a bus that ran on gasoline versus propane. So this is also a coach and equipment bus. So it's slightly cheaper than the bus from Tesco, but it's there as an option if we need it. So I want to go quickly through the scoring breakdown. So when we go through the process to buy buses, the way we determine what specifically product we're going to make is we give them points first. We go through an evaluation, which gets us to the people that are interviewed. And so then we go through the interview process. We talk about warranty, we do a vehicle quality inspection, we talk about price, and then we kind of compile all those scores into an aggregate of all the reviewers, and we say what bus should be awarded to who. So Coach Equipment Manufacturing did not bid on bus 1, but they bid on bus 2, 3, and 4. Tesco bid on bus 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we are awarding the contract essentially in a split to Tesco and Coach Equipment Manufacturing. The bulk of the buses we buy will be purchased through Tesco because they're the same things we're using today. But some of the smaller buses will go to Coach and Equipment. And then if we have the need to buy any of the other sort of gasoline stripped down buses, those would also go through Coach and Equipment. So the way this contract works is it's sort of like a buffet. We say we're going to buy X number of buses. We can pick and choose from any number in the available buses. So we could buy as many bus 1s or 2s or 3s or 4s as we want, up to a total maximum number. Right now, what we would like to have the board approve is 8 bus 1s from Tesco and 8 bus 3s from Coach and Equipment Manufacturing. So these are all replacement buses. This does not expand the fleet at all. This is purely to buy buses to replace existing vehicles. We do expect a pretty long lead time on all of these vehicles between, we heard optimistically 12 months. I don't think that's realistic. I think it's probably more like 18 to 24 months before any of these buses are going to be on site, depending on chassis availability. The big bottleneck for bus production right now is chassis availability. Some bus companies are not even taking orders right now because they can't get any chassis. A lot of the bus manufacturers that are out there are owned by one company, which is called Forest River, which also makes RVs. The margins are higher on RV production. So when that company has a choice to steer chassis towards RVs or buses, they steer them towards RVs most of the time because they make more money off of them. Both of these companies are smaller mom and pop operations that don't also sell RVs. So they've been getting a better sort of trickle of chassis, not their full normal amount, but the chassis availability has been higher for these two companies than it has some of the other companies. So we have grant funds to support this procurement. The total I don't have written on here, but the total is for $2.629 million. So this will start us off on a new 5-year contract. And then, like I said, this specific purchase is for 8 bus 1s and 8 bus 3s. Does anybody have any quick shirt on?
First of all, is the both floor bus, yes, this one, is this one going to be on pickup only?
Yes,
Will it be truck?
correct.
Does it have a wheelchair?
It has a ramp. So all of these are accessible. So all of these have wheelchair securement systems and a way to get customers on. This bus in specific has a manual ramp. The other 3 buses have the wheelchair lift that we've traditionally operated for many years.
Okay, how about 1
So if you look at the pictures, all of these on the back, there's the two doors where the wheelchair lift is. This bus is the same on the back, two doors to the wheelchair lift. Same with this one. So the wheelchair securement system is essentially identical to what we have now.
Given the amount of complaints that I know you've had regarding the ride on the V3s, have you had buses on site that you personally know what the ride is, or have had passengers in wheelchairs try them?
So all the buses that we are proposing to purchase all the dial-a-ride buses we are proposing to purchase are on Ford Econoline chassis, which all have the same suspension. And so the new buses, both this smaller coach and equipment bus and number 4, all have the same suspension and suspension modification. So we have ridden on them and they ride basically the same as the propane dial-a-ride buses.
So you're saying the ride is comparable on these, on number 1 and number 3 as the existing dial-a-ride, number 2.
Yes. So the bus that we get the complaints about is in the bottom right hand is the VT3.
The VT3.
The VT3 for a long time. So let me go back a little. On all of these buses, none of them have the stock Ford suspension. They have the stock Ford leaf springs. We add an augmented system on it called More Ride, which is a rubber block that goes between the frame and the leaf spring so that part of the vibration and the movement gets absorbed by that. That is not available to purchase the same way on a VT3. So we can't make the suspension better at all. We have an augmentation on it that we've tested. It has not performed very well. Most people have said there isn't been a market improvement in the ride, but bus 2, bus 3, and bus 4 all have the same suspension augmentation so that they will ride fundamentally the same.
Okay, so bus 4. Let me back up a second. Having been in these VT3s, it's not just the ride, it is the location of the securements that help produce terrible ride.
That was going to be my point as well.
Yeah, the VT3 it's built totally differently than the buses we're proposing to purchase today. So the buses that we have proposed today should perform, and in our experience have performed essentially the same as the bus everyone is used to. So we expect the complaints about ride to go away. That was one of the things we took into consideration in the process, was that we knew customers didn't like the ride of the VT3, which is also why you don't see it in our recommendations.
Well, I'm concerned about the configuration in the buses, because the best ride for certain passengers is as far forward as possible. You know that. And the further back in the bus you are, and they actually have a place for securement in the VT3, but you're back sitting on the wheel well. And that is a treacherous ride. You cannot get as many passengers or chairs in there the way they are configured on the inside. And even some of the newer dial-a-ride buses have similar issues as far as where the chairs are put. And along with that statement, your L-track, we've had some buses purchased in the past where they haven't used the L-track on both sides. The sides to the right of the bus facing out the front window, they have fixed seats that don't fold, or there's no L-track on that side.
Yes, over time, we have made changes that some people have viewed it positive, some have viewed as negative. Traditionally, those have been motivated by trying to reduce the size of the bus. So the smaller you make the bus, the less options you have inside of it. The seats being able to fold up and down we made that decision because a folding seat is double the price of a non-folding seat. And so we were trying to reduce the cost of the bus because those seats are typically used by ambulatory passengers. They're rarely used by people in wheelchairs. So we said we won't have those seats folding to save some money. People reacted very negatively to that. We went back to folding seats. So these buses are essentially the ones that everyone is used to. They're not major changes from what we're operating today. This bus, for example, the main difference is it has on the left side of the bus, there are 2 seats. On the right side, there are 1 instead of this bus has 2 and 2. So it is smaller. We don't operate as many of them in the fleet. We do have folks that say, hey, no, I don't want to ride this type of bus. We make exceptions, but we took the ride and the layout into consideration to the best of the ability of the manufacturers to make it what people have preferred in the past.
The L-track in those, when you are boarding passengers, both ambulatory and those in wheelchairs, having the ability to fold the seats up makes a big difference for the drivers and the time they need to get passengers boarded and be able to get them secured. There's not a lot of room in these buses. And to me, that's another reason to make sure that they have the ability to fold the seats on both sides.
Sure. Again, that is not something that the seats in these buses all have flip up seats like they have in the past. When we made that decision, it saved roughly $2,500 per bus, which is why we did it. So, over the number of buses, it's a lot of money. People didn't care for it. We went back to the flip up seats, what is in all of these buses today. So, occasionally we try something when we can save some cash or when we think it will work out better. And if it doesn't, we go back to the ways we've done it. And so all these have flip up seats.
What was the price difference again between a number 2 and small bus? Was that number 4?
The price difference between a 1 and a, do we have that in here? Where is the, on the scoring sheet? I'm sorry, I'm flipping around. So the price of a bus 3 is $103,000. The price of a bus 2 is $163,000. So it's about $60,000. Oh, I'm sorry, that was before options. Well, it's still about $60,000 cheaper.
So it's 163 versus how much?
I'm sorry, I read that wrong. It's 123 for a bus 3, 178 for a bus 2. So it's a significant difference.
And what would you say are the differences between the bus?
This bus number 3 is physically smaller than a bus 2. So a bus 3 seats 7 people. It is on a smaller chassis. It has a single rear wheel instead of a dual rear wheel. And it's a smaller bus.
If we get these and we collectively determine these buses are not any more suitable than the VT3s were, does that lock us into the contract to buy more of them, even though we don't like them?
No. So if we buy this 8 and we test them and everybody hates them, then like I said, this contract is a buffet. So if we decide we don't like bus 3 anymore, we can buy all bus 2s. There's no quota per which vehicle we have to buy.
So we're not locking into it.
Correct.
That's good news.
Ben, just for clarity, so all the buses that you're buying would have the ability to fold up, and so they would be able to accommodate multiple wheelchairs, similar to the older style buses.
Yes. So these buses can accommodate 2 wheelchairs in the lower section of the bus for fixed route service. These buses can accommodate 3 wheelchairs within them.
Okay.
So yes.
That's with ambulatory passengers too, or period?
It depends on the configuration of the size of the chair and all that stuff, but it would be 3 wheelchairs and 3 ambulatory is the absolute max. And that would be in an ideal situation.
Are there any other questions or comments for Ben? Is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into and execute contracts with Tesco for for the purchase of 8 vehicles and coach and equipment for the purchase of 8 vehicles at a cost not to exceed $2,629,600. Motion made by Mr. Swanson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Nunley. Trudy, if you can please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley.
Yes.
Sheets. Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And we're going to continue with Ben to talk about a bus for Lake Erie College service.
Yeah, so this motion is to approve the purchase of 1 bus for service with Lake Erie College. So we're in the final steps of negotiating the contract. We're not 100% done, but we are talking about some very minute details. They have asked us to run service between the old Chase Bank building and their campus in Painesville. Service would run for approximately 160 days annually, from 7:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. or 10:30 a.m. and then 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. So I got that out of order. So the bus we are proposing for this service is essentially a bus 1 from the last presentation. It's the same vehicle we operate at Lakeland Community College. Lake Erie really wanted a trolley. I had a lot of conversations with them about not having a trolley. They're more expensive to operate. They cost more to buy. So what we arrived at as a compromise is the bus number 1, the low floor vehicle, but painted to look like a trolley. So it's kind of like a bus in disguise. So this is a rough mock-up. Think of the white in that picture as gold. And so the bus would have a green kind of trolley vibe going to it. But it's the same bus we've operated successfully for Lakeland. So it's something we know how to work on. We know how to maintain. We're buying more of them. So it is it's the right bus for the job. And once they saw it, they agreed. This particular bus, normally I would want the contract to be 100% done before I came to you and said, let's buy a bus for it. However, our bus vendor, who I love, but sometimes am sort of suspicious of, has been holding a chassis for us that someone canceled their order on a 2021. So they have a leftover chassis. And the story that they told me is that when it was canceled, it wasn't canceled in the order system. So someone left it behind the building. And so there's been a chassis sitting behind the building for the last 6 months that everyone forgot about. And when they found it, they said, let's sell it right away. My bus vendor called me and said, hey, they found a bus behind a building. Do you want to buy it? And I said, what the heck is wrong with you? You're crazy. So we have a line on a chassis that is a little cheaper than what we're looking at now. It also means it's on the bus vendor's property, so it can be built quickly. So they want this service to start in August of 23. So this actually is sort of one of those situations where it fits well for the situation. And so I've had him holding it for us, but he told me that if I didn't place the order by the end of this month, he was selling it to someone else. So I brought it to the board today to approve. It is the same vehicle that you just approved in the bus 1s. So in the off chance that our longtime negotiations with Lake Erie fell apart, we still can use this bus for other things. So there's not a lot of risk in awarding it slightly before the contract is awarded. I know it's a little out of order, but I also thought it was a good idea. This bus is about $10,000 cheaper than if we wait to buy it from another one. So other than its paint job, it is the same as all the other buses. So yeah, the only things left we have in the contract are very minor. You know, Brandon did a good job drafting the contract, which I sent to them, and we just have to, there was a date they had a little issue with, but it's all very minor stuff. I expect to be wrapped up here in the next 30 days. No, it's a brand new chassis just sitting there. It doesn't, I said bus, I misspoke. It's just a chassis. The bus body hasn't been built yet, but it's just sitting there. It's still got the shrink wrap on it.
And it's still okay?
It's still okay.
Mr. Dines, do you want to maybe brief a little bit on where you're at with the contract? I presume obviously Laketran and Lake Erie College are operating in good faith. It always just inherently makes me nervous until things are signed.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Mr. President. This was a contract that in some parts mirrors the one that we have with Lakeland Community College, and we kind of worked from there to make it very similar. I, for some reason, can't get anything going to pull it up to speak to you about it. Ben and I talked about it. I know that he sent it over to them in his typical fashion. What we do is wait to hear back from them if they have any comments or red lines or revisions, and then go from there. So that's really where it stands now.
Yeah.
Not,
And they gave me back comments while I was on vacation. I haven't had a chance to kind of outline them and give them to Brandon, but they were, I would call them incredibly minor. The bulk of the contract is good. But like I said, in the weird chance that it didn't follow through, this bus could be used in other parts of our service. And so it's still advantageous to be able to buy a bus for $10,000 less of normal.
Is Lake Erie College paying for some portion of this?
Over time, their contract does pay for it, yeah.
Like what percentage?
The local match. So they're paying 20% essentially.
Are they paying for their paint job?
It's included in the price, yeah. The incremental difference, yes, I'm sorry.
Ben,
Sure.
we'll have one bus that looks like an ugly green trolley.
Yes.
She said she's never loved you more.
Well, what happens? I mean, we have two buses for Lakeland, don't we?
Yes.
What happens if this one breaks down?
Then
They're
we
gonna-
we put a normal, regularly marked Laketran bus on their service.
There's nothing in our contract with them that says it has to be this ugly bus.
We say we will provide one bus, but then if there's a failure, they get whatever we have.
Okay,
We gave them in Lakeland the option to have extra buses, but I said, you know, they're relatively reliable. For the couple days it's broken or needs maintenance, you probably want just a regular Laketran bus.
well, I just hope we don't have to buy two of these ugly things, that's all.
No.
Mr. Sheets, I can assure you that I would not draft a contract that allowed Lake Erie College to determine and what type of bus they were going to get or color wise. If they want to come back with that, we can discuss, but that would be. the
Thank
case.
you.
Or if the contract's terminated, they need to restore it to the original.
That was my question. If the contract is terminated, who gets the bus back and who's responsible for repainting it?
We still own it. If the contract were to end, and it's a 10-year contract, if the contract were to end, the bus still belongs to us. We don't have any language in there about changing it back to Laketran colors if the contract ends, but that's something that in this case, it's probably good the contract isn't completely finished because we can add that in there.
Is the bus painted or wrapped?
That is paint.
Okay, so
Yeah, they need to paint it.
So, yeah, because wouldn't be able to use that in any other fashion.
No,
Downtown painful.
What does typically cost a bus of this size to paint it?
a paint job on a bus this size is usually $5,000 to $7,000, depending on the type of paint used.
So if the vendor is Tesco and we're purchasing other buses from them, is there any chance they will wait till the contract is signed for the board to make a decision?
What I will probably do is give them the go-ahead to snatch up the other chassis, and I will wait to finish the other 8 order that we just approved a second ago. So there'll still be 8 buses on order, but one of them would be this chassis because we can get it cheaper.
So you're saying it wouldn't be turned into an ugly bus until you had a signed contract?
The paint doesn't happen until the end of the process, so they could start building this bus now, and it'll take the next 3 to 6 months to construct it, and then the last step is paint. So we will know well before they get to the paint stage if the contract is complete.
So that's a bit of a mood issue.
Yes. And this is not the final look of it. It is kind of not my favorite aesthetic. But this was a draft our bus vendor put together without me asking. He just kind of did it.
Is
So,
green Lake Erie colors or something?
yes. It may end up being blue with a trolley look. You know, we still haven't quite figured. Yeah, so this is, yeah, this is how that's how we dual branded it for Lakeland. So this is also cheaper because it's just a vinyl graphic. Yeah. But that is,
Well, that was an interesting discussion.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, but how long is that contract if it does get signed? How long is it the tenure of the contract?
10 years.
10 years.
I generally tell people if they want a special bus, that the contract has to be 10 years so that that bus's life is, so since this bus doesn't get used quite as heavily as our other buses, we project the life to be 10 years. And that's how we set the term of the contract so that the bus lasts the duration of the contract. And when we come to renew, when we need a new bus, we can renegotiate and change the fee structure and everything to accommodate it different. So we use that same model for Lakeland.
Sorry, one more question. If the base bus is for number one is 189,000 and this is 193,000, are they adding some like options to it? Do we know offhand?
So it does have the destination sign and the stop request and all that stuff. So there are some options added, but not quite as many.
I mean,
as
is that the discounted price for this chassis?
193?
Yeah,
Yeah, that is the cheaper price. So if you look at compared to bus one, the total price would be 204, 859 or 854. So that is just about $10,000 cheaper.
all right.
Because there are still some options that get added in. And I guess I should have explained that. The reason the options don't have a dedicated number is because the software companies won't sell direct to the bus vendors, so they won't give them pricing for the trapeze equipment. And so we priced out the trapeze equipment specifically for the Lake Erie bus because we have some slightly different options on it than a normal bus would have. So that's why the price is fixed. That makes sense.
Any other questions or comments for Ben? Is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to purchase one low-floor bus from Tesco to operate campus shuttle service for Lake Erie College at a cost not to exceed $193,175?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Stenger. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. McAmey. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
McTimmy,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Sheets,
yes,
Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'll turn the meeting back over to Ben for the 6-month look ahead.
All right, so 6-month look ahead, just to kind of talk about the things we have coming up. There's not a lot of changes from our last meeting. We have worked on the owner's representative services, but the schedule we have come up with, we do not need an August special meeting. So everyone, we have our normal break as scheduled in August. So you're certainly welcome to come here on the 4th Monday, but you don't have to. In September, we have a presentation from the audit or the auditors to talk about the 2022 audit. We will have an approval request to accept the 2022 audit. We will have the upgrade or update to the pay grade tables. Just a reminder, I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. This does not include any wage or salary actions. This is just the ranges which the pay grades exist in. So this is not a motion for raises or anything like that. It is just the pay ranges. For September, we will have the Breckenridge Supplemental Paratransit Agreement on the agenda. Again, they provide some dial ride to their residents, and we kind of do a cost sharing project for it to keep costs low for both of us. We will have an approval request to renew Cornerstone's contract for their last option. And just kind of as a reminder, this will be the last time this contract looks exactly like this. Once the IT strategic plan is completed, we will most likely make changes to this agreement, but it won't be done in time to keep this going. So we thought having it for one more year probably makes the best sense based on the outcome of the strategic plan. There is a cancellation clause in it. So if we do the cancellation clause and we really want to make a change quickly, we do have the option to terminate the contract early. So there's not really any risk to continuing it for now until we have the strategic plan finished. For October, we have a fleet detailing procurement. Right now, we use Deepwood's Community Employment Services to do fleet detailing. The contract will go out to bid for a new one. We also use Deepwood Industries CES for janitorial services in HQ. Same thing, the contract is expired. We're going out to procure a new one. And In October, we expect to have a vendor for the IT strategic plan to be awarded by the board. In November, we will present the annual budget or the proposed budget for 2023, which will now include some extra service. We will also have an approval request for gasoline and diesel as we have in the past. So this will approve a 1-year contract for fuel purchases. We do expect to see some increase, but as we've all seen, the prices are starting to come down right now. So we'll see where this kind of lands. In December, we'll have a presentation of the approval of the annual budget. We also have the approval request of the garage floor sleeper slash cleaner. I won't go into that one in detail again, but we're working on the procurement process to buy a new street sweeper. I hate that one. January, we have the Title VI plan, which is a requirement by the feds. The Title VI plan is essentially a plan required by the feds to ensure that we are treating everyone equally and equitably. And as of right now, we do not have any actions for February, even though I'm sure we will have some as time kind of moves along. Does anybody have any questions about any of that?
What are you thinking for an organizational strategic plan?
Right now, our plan is to kind of get some of the building stuff wrapped up and then transition into a strategic planning procurement process.
So that would probably be sometime in the spring.
It will depend on the schedule the board decides to keep with the headquarters project. In theory, right now, the owner's rep will be, actually have a timeline in my CEO report right here. The owner's rep contract would be brought to the board in September if this schedule holds. And once the owner's rep is selected, depending on how much time the committee would like them to review the blueprints, we would then go through the bid process for the actual project. So my guess is that we'd be awarding a contract in first quarter of next year. And then we would transition to the strategic plan process, assuming that schedule stays intact. So my guess would be first to second quarter of next year, but that's a very tentative kind of guess. Sorry, I guess, does anyone else questions on the 6-month look ahead? Okay, if I roll into, so I wanted to give everyone a update on the owner's rep schedule. So this is the schedule we're moving forward with right now. The proposal was issued. It is out on the street for people to propose on. There's a pre-proposal conference at Laketran on August 1st. It is also, I believe, virtual. The final day for proposers to submit questions is August 4th. Once we have those questions, we will respond to all of them by August 8th. Their statement of qualifications, which is their proposal, is due August 10th. At that time, the documents will be sent to all the committee members to do their paper evaluation. And then on August 24th, we will schedule all the interviews, conduct the interviews between August 29th and September 2nd. And then we'll have the committee will have to finalize its decision on who they want to hire by the 7th. And then we will negotiate between September 7th and 15th, and then prepare the documents to be approved on the board agenda on September 26th. This is a draft, but this is just all laid out so the board can kind of see all the steps that have to take place. So this could be extended if it needed to be. There's no mandate or no regulation or rule that says this schedule has to be followed exactly. So adjustments can be made, and especially with the interview process, there may be some tweaks and adjustments in that process. Geauga Transit study. Ooh, I did not update that from last time. Hopefully all of you have talked to the Geauga Transit consultants. I had a meeting with Geauga Transit and the consultants last week on Wednesday. The consultants came up with 4 options for how we could think about working more with Geauga. For those of you that have talked to them, option 1 and 4 were sort of off the table in their mind. Option 1 was status quo. Option 4 was a complete and full merger. I don't think anybody thought that was a good idea. And then the other 2 options they had, even for me, who's been in transit for 20 years, they were very transitese, and they were really weird suggestions that I had a hard time with. So we talked about with the consultant a different option that could be pursued if all parties agreed to it, which would be essentially Laketran operates Geauga Transit under contract for, say, 5 years. So the Geauga County Commissioners would say to us, we would like you to operate Geauga Transit for us. They would then pay us, we would become the grantee, and we would run the service essentially as if it was Laketran, but it would be branded Geauga Transit. It would still be segregated, but it would be operated by us. So their facility would stay intact. They would be Laketran employees, they'd be Laketran vehicles, but it would be paid for by the existing revenue stream from Geauga County. So that is very draft and kind of high level. Obviously, this still needs more review by the consultants and a little more discussion by both the Geauga County Commissioners and by us here at Laketran. We've kind of been waiting to see what their recommendations are before we get into some details with the board. But we did then have a conversation with the Geauga County Commissioners, just to talk about how they felt, and they seemed to be generally, they were receptive to that concept. No decisions have been made, no recommendations have formally been made, but there has been a lot of discussion. Obviously, the important things, for us is, what does Laketran get out of it? What do the Lake County taxpayers get out of it? Why should we be involved in something like this? I did send that sheet out to the board prior to the interviews for all the reasons that in my head are a good thing for us to do this, or the good reason why we should do something like this. Once they get further into the study, we should get some more reasons from them that are more kind of official, like these are the benefits to all parties. It's obviously Laketran doesn't want to be just supporting Geauga for the fun of it. If we're going to get involved, we need some reason for us to be participating. We just talked about Lake Erie College a whole bunch, almost done. IT strategic plan, the RFP has been completed. We must have done a good job because nobody had any comments. So it has been put out to bid, and we should have a contract for the board in October. The IT or the disaster recovery plan has been completed, and it has been sent to the auditors for review. Our objective is to have that part of the auditor's talking points in September. So our goal was for us to have it completed, let the auditors review it, tell us if it's good, and then they can report back to the board if what we did was sufficient for them. Lastly, I apologize. I forgot to include the grant application charts in my CEO report electronically, so I'm sorry about that. I realized this morning that I forgot it, so here it is. Not really any major changes from last time. We are, there's no really new applications on here. What the two main things are, we have the OTP2 funding from ODOT and our federal formula funds. So really no new requests for grants, but I apologize for not putting that in my CEO report. Or is it in there? Oh, I thought I forgot it. I'm sorry. I was panicking this morning, and yeah, so it is in there. Sorry. But even notwithstanding that, there's no real major updates to it. So does anybody have any questions about any of the stuff I kind of rambled on about?
Great. Thank you, Ben. Gary, was there any special projects committee update?
The committee hasn't met since our last board meeting, so there's no formal report. We do see the effects. Everybody walked in on the new sidewalk. I hope that makes access easier for some of our folks. And Ben touched on the OR process. So that's about it.
Great. Thank you so much. Is there any old business in the room? Any new business? At this time, is there a motion to adjourn today's meeting? Motion made by Mr. Sheets,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Nunley. Trudy, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Sheets.
Yes.
Stanger,
Yes.
Swanson.
Thank you. And for our new board member, Kim, this was an incredibly short and quick meeting. We are adjourned at 5:28.